Greetings, friends. Welcome to our first module that has the content, and we learn about artists and artwork. And I wanted to share with you, I really had on my mind when I sat down to think about like starting to develop ideas for this class and, what artworks to look at, what artists to study. It was really in the front of my mind to talk about Yellowstone National Park. Now, Yellowstone National Park is out west. Most of it is in the state of Wyoming, but it's also in a little bit of Montana and Idaho. And the reason this was so on my mind was because my family got to visit there this summer. We go out every summer and visit family that live in Utah, and usually we'll stretch out and we'll drive and visit other places out west. Like we have visited different national parks like Bryce Canyon, or we have been to San Francisco. And this year we decided let's drive up to Yellowstone because we realized it was only about 3 hours away from where we were staying. We were just blown away by Yellowstone National Park. Little fun fact thing about Yellowstone National Park was the first national park in the United States. Now, an interesting bit that we learned about, this is a painting by Thomas Moran. Thomas Moran was a painter, and he actually whoops, I went too far there. He went on, I don't like keep doing that. He kept going on. He went on an expedition to, doing that. He went on an expedition, which means he traveled around to go look at and see new land. And him and another artist, these are some of his paintings that he did of his time in Yellowstone. And he also took with him um, William Henry Jackson. And William Henry Jackson was a photographer. Now, what's interesting about this to think about is that photography was not really that common yet. Photography had been invented in the early 1800s, but like anything with technology, when it's first invented, only very few people have it. It's still kind of being tested and used. And so when you realize that in the mid to late 1800s when the camera started to become readily available, like we've got some documentation of the Civil War with photographs. And what was interesting about photographs is it was a relatively new medium. So even though we have William, these are some examples of his pictures that he took with a camera of Yellowstone, and they're in black and white, which it still gives you lots of detail about what was there and what was going on. But what was interesting is we still needed, up until this point in the 1800s, I love telling my kids at school about this too. Like we have to realize like how much we needed artists throughout the thousands and years that the world has been around, millions of years that the world's been around. We lean on artists to learn a lot about our history because there wasn't the camera being around is really kind of a new thing in the last couple hundred years. And so with Thomas Moran making these paintings and sketches and drawings, like he would bring these paintings, especially this one here. This is a very famous painting. It actually hung in the United States Capitol building. This is of the Yellowstone Grand Canyon and the great waterfall that's there, and the river that makes the canyon. And he made this painting. They brought all this artwork back. So between him making paintings like this and William Henry Jackson making photography like this, and like with those two things, they brought all that back to Washington, and them having all these documents, all these pictures to show the politicians and show the president. That's what, because there would be like when people had explored the out west, like they'd come back and have stories, but then like when they would talk about the beauty of it, a lot of times people would say, "Oh, well, that's not real. That can't be the way you're describing the beauty of this place. It must not be real." Well, once they bring back these pictures, then they know, like, oh my gosh, this is too beautiful to pass up. So then that's what inspired the government officials to develop the national park system, to assign Yellowstone as the first national park, to protect it and preserve it, and to make sure that we wouldn't develop it. People were moving out west more and more and more. They were, selling off land to individuals. People were building farms and towns, and the government said, when they saw these pictures of this beauty, they're like, you know what, we have to protect this area. And that's what started the national park system, which is now throughout the United States. There's several national parks where we preserve the land to keep it historic. So when we were there, we found ourselves, like, as beautiful as this painting is, that that Thomas Moran did a great job with this painting, but it just didn't quite capture the reality. We found ourselves as we hiked this canyon and would stop and see this exact spot that we're looking at right here that Thomas Moran would have seen. And we're just blown away at the beauty, like the natural beauty. So as we begin our learning in the topic of place and nature specifically, like our first handful of weeks, we'll explore how nature all around us can inspire our art making, can inspire our imagination and our creativity. And like I wanted to start here because it was interesting because as we toured the park, um, scrolling back through these samples I had, this is me in front of Old Faithful there at there, but this is a photograph I took of the Grand Canyon spot, and I snapped a picture of it, the pictures really didn't capture it. Like being there, we just had to soak it all in. That's one of the inspirations I want to give you as we explore place, as we explore our art making. I want you to keep in mind, as an artist, we want to look carefully with our eye. And one way we develop our creativity, we develop our art skills, is we look carefully with our eye. And when we draw things or paint things or create things, we're practicing looking carefully and trying to create it and looking at the lines and shapes that we would see. And so as we look around at nature over these next few weeks, I want you to be thinking about looking carefully. And we saw so many people. Here's what I mean by this. We saw since nowadays, like I was saying earlier, the camera is relatively new. Well, now though, with the advances of technology, oh my gosh, it's like we all have a camera available to us really fast. Those of you who are older students might have your own phone. If you don't have your own phone, your mom and dad might have a phone or a camera. And it's just like we saw so many people. This was their experience walking up to places like this. We would hike and we'd have lookouts and we'd stop and we'd take it in. So many people around us, though, they'd walk up, they'd take their phone out of their pocket, they'd go click, 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 and they'd walk away. And as much as this is such a powerful tool, photography is such a powerful tool and it lets us capture so much. But at the same time, like us, it was like this different mindset. And that's what I want to encourage you to develop in art is a different mindset. Like not just snap the picture to grab it quick. Like for us at spots like this, it's always an afterthought. It's like we're sitting there soaking up the nature and we're looking around carefully. And then before we leave, there's this thought of, oh, right, I should probably take a picture of this because no one's going to believe I saw this. I want you to try to develop that kind of mindset that to be a careful looker, to be a careful observer and look at things carefully and develop your craft. So as we go, and this is the other end. Like if so this picture here is looking down at the great waterfall that falls down through the river. This picture of we had hiked down to that end and we're standing right, you can kind of see the steam standing right above the waterfall where it's falling down. And so we just stood there. Just there's so many things you see new too when you look at it carefully, and we'd see colors over here where the water was splashing, and it just so as you explore nature and explore anything in art really, remember to look carefully. And this was cool too. We saw this on a sign that was at that lookout point. One of Thomas Moran's sayings from the expedition is that they were beyond the reach of human art, that the beauty that he saw there, it was beyond what we could make. Like it just is the beauty that we see around us in our world, and in especially places like Yellowstone. But that, and even if you haven't traveled far away like that, there's beauty right around us. There's natural places, and we'll go into that in the coming weeks. There's beauty right near us. There is beauty right where we're at. We could walk out our door, and like I said in my intro video last week, like one of my favorite places to be is under my tree out in my backyard. And so there is beauty all around to look at. So that's one of the encouraging things for this week is to train ourselves to look carefully, to look closely, and to try not to miss things. So, but I want to then here's some other photos, other places in Yellowstone. There's these great geysers, and they call them the painted pots. Like this is a prismatic spring. Like all these colors, and again, the photographs do not do it justice. Like it is so hard to get a good photograph, but when we were there, like all these fun colors that you see, those are naturally occurring colors that happen with like the fungus and the bacteria and the rocks that are there and the steam, and that just it's a naturally occurring, like it looked like something that might be out of like a alien movie or something, but they're just naturally occurring colors. Again, more of the river where we saw the waterfalls kind of frame my shot with the bridge that's there. So it's just really cool ways. And then also, again, to encourage you to look closely. Like a lot of my pictures were big, grand, like let me take as much of it as I can with my view. But then there's also looking closely. Like this was just a tree stump that we encountered as we hiked the path. There's beauty in the lines and the rings and the shapes. So again, one of the biggest encouragements is look closely. Don't be in a rush. That's always good advice when it comes to art and developing creativity and art skills, is to look closely, take your time. So that ties in well with the craftsmanship too. Um, as we so that's kind of an intro of what's there on the slides and the material that I want you to go over. And we're going to ask you to do a little more research with the prompts too about things, and then you'll have your art prompt in the assignment as well. So these videos that I do here, let me give you a little bit of information about that. These videos here, at the beginning, they're just kind of an overview. And so you'll usually be asked to go deeper and do some other things and to follow up. So again, if you have any questions, always reach out, be proactive, and we'll talk to you soon.